Hey guys, this is Brother Ray Jones with the First Church of God in Princeton, West Virginia. And down through the years, I have learned that there are several things I can do. And one of the things I've acquired along the way is making cookies. And these cookies that you see here in this picture have a real interesting story. Back, it seems like 100 years ago now, when I was in junior high school, they made us take home economics. And there were 2 semesters involved with that. One part of the class, one semester, you took sewing. And I can just tell you that didn't work out real good for me. But then the next part, we took cooking. And while we were taking the cooking part, one of the recipes that we had to make was a peanut butter cookie, and they called it peanut butter crinkles. And to be honest with you, the first time we made those, my group, we messed those up horribly. But fortunately, I held on to that recipe and we got it right later. And they came out right and they tasted really good. And this cookie recipe that was called peanut butter crinkles back in the day has kind of evolved. Now if you look here, the cookies that you see are a little bit of the evolution of that. Back here is the original peanut butter crinkles. That is the recipe as it was given to us in junior high school. But somewhere along the way, the woman that I had the privilege of being married to for 21 years, she said to me, why don't you try putting chocolate chips in them? So we added chocolate chips to them, and we started calling them homemade peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. Then somewhere along the way, instead of making them just in the regular cookie size, somebody gave me the idea on how we could make them in a 1/4 pound size like this, and then you wrap those in plastic, and that's kind of a grab and go kind of thing. And then we got the bright idea, why don't we see if we can make this cookie into a cookie cake. So there are 3 different sizes that this cookie comes in, and I just want to give you a little bit more of the backdrop in this. As I made these, there were times when the kids were in school, we would make them in this form right here, and we'd take them for school parties. And they were such a hit that by the time they got out of elementary school, all I had to do was walk in the building with this container, and teachers started smiling because they knew what was coming in those cookies. I got to be honest with you, down through the years as I made these cookies, for the longest time I wouldn't share the recipe. I just thought, hey, it's a recipe that I got and helped develop and adjusting it some, and you know, it's your recipe, you're going to keep it. But after I had the death of a loved one, and my kid's mom passed away, and the love of my life for 21 years passed away, I realized this important thing. Life is really too short to not share good things. So we made the recipe public. It's on Facebook, it's on my page in a note called Make the Cookies. The story behind the cookies is there, and the recipe is there. And I'm sure we'll post that again with the video that's going to go up here. But here's what I found out, even though I gave the recipe out. People kept contacting me and saying, hey, my cookies aren't coming out like yours. Well, just let me back up and tell you this. These are not hard to make. They're not hard at all. They're easy. They're so easy I can make them, and I can't do much in the kitchen, all right? I can boil toast, I can burn water, and I can make cookies. But that's about it. But if I can make these, you can. But so many people kept telling me, hey, my cookies aren't coming out like yours. What am I doing wrong? Well, I'm not sure exactly what each one may be doing wrong, but I've been asked to show you how I do this. And that's what this video is about. So the finished product is right here. And now we're going to show you how we got to this point. Okay? So this begins with your oven. And ovens are different. When you get the recipe and you look at it, you're going to see that the recipe calls for the oven to be preheated at 375 degrees. That is a standard rule. But you better check your oven and see, and you're just going to have to try it to see how this is going to work in your oven. These ovens, I've already used them, and 370 degrees works better here. I don't know how to explain it other than to say ovens are different. An oven that I used in Louisiana, I had to turn it up to 395. The oven at my house here in Princeton, I've got to turn it down to 350. So all I can tell you is try it out and see what happens. The one thing I can be sure of is that you need to make sure that your oven rack is up on the second setting. You want that to be on the second setting. That's where you're going to bake from. Okay? Now, I've been asked too, can you do more than one pan at a time? That's never worked out good for me. If that works for you in your oven, you go for it. But in household ovens, I've never had any success with that, so I just do one pan at a time. But let's look and see about how I actually mix the ingredients. The ingredients for this recipe starts with 1 1/4 cup of peanut butter. I've chosen to use Jif peanut butter today. Peter Pan works good. Honestly, some of the off-brands work pretty good too, but Jif happens to be what I've got. And I would highly recommend that you get a measure-all cup. This is a Pampered Chef brand. I believe Betty Crocker probably makes one as well, but this is a good measuring cup for peanut butter and other items that are of that consistency. So it's 1 1/4 cups of peanut butter. We also, in this recipe, we need 1 cup or 2 sticks of margarine. I've chosen to use Blue Bonnet. You need to understand, Blue Bonnet works good, Imperial, any of them, but it needs to be softened, not melted, but softened. So we're going to put that in the mixing bowl as well. This recipe calls for 1 cup of white granulated sugar and 1 cup of light brown sugar, and that needs to be firmly pressed in the cup, packed in that cup. Along with that, you need half a teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, two large eggs. I prefer the extra large eggs at Walmart. You can use whatever you want, just be sure you get large eggs. And it calls for 2. I am using a KitchenAid stand mixer with the flat bar, and I've been able to successfully put all of those ingredients in there before I even began any of the mixing. If you don't want to do it that way, you don't have to, but that's how I do it. With that mixing, I'm going to rinse my hands off. Now, here's something you need to know. If you want to have peanut butter cookies only, you need to go on from here and add the sugar, or add the flour. If you want chocolate chips in the cookies, you want to add 2 cups of chocolate chips at this point. That makes it easier in the whole process. You let this mixture do its job. Just so you'll know, if you buy one 12-ounce package of chocolate chips, that equals 2 cups. You don't even have to measure that out, okay? Well, now comes the fun part. This recipe calls for 3 cups of flour. And I want to show you how I measure out 3 cups, all right? In home ec, they told us to do a level cup. Well, my cups, when I do this, are heaping cups. And that makes a difference, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. You want to add these one at a time. Now, I want you to see this part of it makes a pretty good difference. If you go with 3 level cups of flour, your dough is going to come out really, really moist, and it's going to stick to your hands a lot. And that's okay if that's how you want your dough to be and how you want your cookies to come out. But if you bake them at this point with just that much flour using level cups only, what's going to happen is that your cookies are going to flatten out more. If you go back and look at the ones I've got on the cooling rack over there, you will see that mine stayed thick and moist in the middle. That all has to do with putting in more flour. The heaping cups, and by the way, the flour is all-purpose flour, not self-rising. It is all-purpose flour. So if you leave your dough moist, as you go to mix it up, it's going to come out sticking on your hands. Again, you can go ahead and make your cookies with dough like that, but if you do, they're going to flatten out more than staying thick. That's why I put in a little extra flour in the form of heaping cups. You usually have to end up mixing those a little bit more by hand. But when you do that, you get that dough to the consistency to where it doesn't stick to your hands anymore. So now, I've got dough that I can stick my hand in, and it's not coming back and sticking to them at all. Okay? So, this is a single batch of cookie dough. And if you want to make, this will make 4 to 5 dozen of the small cookies, 18 to 20 of the larger cookies, and 2 cookie cakes. So just let me show you real quick. If you roughly divide this in half, that looks like almost half to me. That right there will turn into 1 cookie cake. Let me show you real quick how we measure that out and flatten that out. You're going to roll this as best you can in some sugar. Now put that big ball of dough in the middle of your pan and flatten it out, pushing the edge, maintaining the edge to be thicker. A guy in Louisiana that worked at church camp helped me figure this out. He said if you keep your dough thick on the edges, the perimeter won't burn as quickly. So then, sprinkle some sugar on top. And we'll put this in the oven for approximately 10 minutes. Now, the more common form of this cookie for your kids' parties, for class parties and things like that, church events, you want to roll the dough out into 1 to 2 inch balls. You're going to roll them in sugar, and you're going to put them on an ungreased cookie sheet. Now, let me say something real quick about the cookie sheet, the baking sheet you use. I'm using an aluminum baking sheet. If you can get these at Sam's Club, 2 of them for $12. Some of the baking sheets out there have a non-stick surface on them, and they're darker. If you're using one of those, you're going to have to watch your bake time because the darker pans cook them a little quicker. As a general rule, it takes about 10 minutes for these cookies to bake. Again, you're going to have to just make that a general rule. You're going to have to watch your particular cookies in your particular oven and see how they're doing. So you roll these out into 1 to 2 inch size balls. You roll them in sugar, and I usually can place them 5 across and 7 down at this size on one sheet. So we'll get a few more of these on here. And then we'll show you the larger ones. When you go to make the larger cookies, you cannot keep them in a ball like you do these smaller ones. When you make the larger cookies, you're going to do these out kind of like a hamburger patty. They'll be about 1/4 pound. Round them out, flatten them out, and then coat them in sugar. And you can do those 2 across. And if you're doing all of them this size on one pan, I can usually fit 8 on a pan. So there are the 3 different sizes, and we're going to get the rest of this rolled out, put them in the oven. We're going to show you what they look like to come out of the oven. I'm going to give you a heads up. What you're going to be looking for is for them to turn golden brown and to crack or crinkle. That's why they were called peanut butter crinkles originally. They crinkle because you've rolled them in sugar. When they're done, they crack or crinkle. So We'll pause this video, finish this up, and we'll show you the finished product out of the oven in just a minute. Alright, so these the cookie cake and the cookies are in the oven. The cookie cake is done. We want you to see what this looks like. You can see it's beginning to get brown on the edges, and it's kind of cracked a little bit on the edges. And just let me go ahead and warn you, you're going to think it's not done yet, but I'm telling you that's done. You need to take it out, and now is the next really fun part, because you can't leave it on the baking sheet, the cookie sheet, or it's just going to keep baking. And if you let it cool there, you're not going to get the outcome that you want. It's not going to come out like mine. So let me show you real quick how I take a cookie cake off of here to get it to cool. You need, and this happens to be a grilling spatula, you got to kind of loosen it up from the pan. Without tearing it up. And again, it's going to be real soft, but it's okay. It's going to be all right. Trust me on this. Now, another thing, this is a little hillbilly ingenuity. Get you an old microwave glass plate out of a microwave that's not working anymore. That's going to be the pan that you eventually put this on, and that's going to work out real good on size. And let me grab this cooling rack real quick and show you. I've got a large cooling rack. And here's the trick of the trade. You take the cooling rack, you set it on top, you make you a little sandwich. You turn that over, and there you go. But you don't want to leave it like that too long. You got to do that one more time. And there you have it. We're going to put this on the cooling rack. Alright, the other pan is about done. And I want you to see gold brown on top, cracked. That is done. And here's a very important part of this process, as I said with the cake. You got to get them off the pan or they're going to keep baking. So you need some good cooling racks. They're going to feel really soft, and you're going to think they're not done, but trust me, they are. As long as they're cracked on top, they're done. You take them off, you let them cool. I will go ahead and tell you this. If you will let them get them off this pan and give them about 90 seconds on this cooling rack and get you a glass of cold milk, you will be spoiled rotten, because these are the very best, in my opinion, right out of the oven. That is still really soft, but you've got to get that off again of the baking sheet, or it's going to keep baking. And you want it to stay soft in the middle. Alright? Now, after they've cooled, the smaller ones I usually put on a styrofoam foam plate and wrap in plastic. That keeps them fresh. That is, if you don't put them in one of these vintage handy dandy Tupperware containers. For the ones this size, just wrap those completely in plastic, and you will see when these cool, they're going to come out just like that. They're still firm. They're going to be soft in the middle as well. And for the cookie cake, when that cools off, you can simply wrap that in plastic. Now, some folks have put icing on these, and man, hey, you have at it. You do whatever you want to with that. I hope you will try this. I hope you will enjoy them. And it is my privilege to share these with you, because there are two things I know beyond the shadow of any doubt. Life is too short to not share good things, and eternity is too long to not know Jesus. So you might find yourself right now having some inside time, some downtime. Here's your recipe and a process to make what is, I believe, a really, really good cookie. You try it for yourself and see. And when you make them, I'd encourage you, take a picture, post it. We'd love to hear about it. We'd love to see that you were able to do this and that you enjoyed them. If you have any questions about them, hey, send me a message. I'll try any way I can to help you out. God bless, and have a great day.